Hello, and welcome to Deep Impact, a proud member of the Duft Network where we dive deep into Wildbow's most shortest work, 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And Ruben Morehouse, it's your turn.
Hey, it's me. We're here to talk about Judgment 16.7, but wait, Elliot, before we do, it's with a heavy heart that I have to announce that our show's coming to an end soon. But don't worry, we're doing a 24-hour live stream featuring such great activities as a fan art review where we're going to just look at Pact fan art and talk about it. And that'll be fun, I think.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many cool activities that we're going to get up to. That's just one of them. I can't wait. Go check out the schedule. It's in the show notes below.
Yeah, find it down below. Now let's get into this. Judgment 16.7, which begins with Mags introducing Rose to her mouse-themed children at this theme park.
Who, their official name is the Mouseketeers from now on, right?
And so the Disneyland comparisons are made later in this chapter, and I kind of can't believe that we didn't make that comparison ourselves. I feel like we failed in our duty as live readers if we haven't pointed out that the mouse children that live in the theme park are obviously Disney themed.
I don't remember saying anything about that in Signature, so yeah, I think we just failed.
Yeah, it feels like Wildbow wrote it into this chapter just to be like, you idiots, it's obviously a hilarious joke. Why did you not pick up on it?
Nobody got my joke like 8 months ago. I need to rectify this.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I love how this chapter sort of opens with Rose staring out into space. Like she's kind of looking outside, and there's the hordes of vestige wretches is the term that's used a lot in this chapter. And they're in this sort of orgy of destruction of each other mostly. And it makes her really uncomfortable. So she eventually manages to pull her attention back into the room. And I really like this because last chapter ended with Rose sort of seeing the Mouseketeers and thinking, oh, I don't want to think about that. And so she looked out the window. And now this chapter's like, okay, so she's looking out the window, and that's even worse. So
back to the mouse children.
Back to the mouse children.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's such a great way to open, because this is a chapter that, for me, was all about diving into Rose. And
yes,
since I'm kind of assuming we're about to exit Rose's POV...
It does seem like that.
For at least a little while. It's really interesting to go into a real big deep dive on where she's at right now. And that's, I think the majority of what we're going to be talking about today is, all the massive insights we get into Rose's sort of state of mind. This chapter is, on all sides, she's confronted by things that remind her of her shithouse situation.
Yeah, it's interesting. She really, I mean, she doesn't seem to be kind of super emotional or reactive this chapter, except the bit where she almost cuts off the head of one of these mouse children, I suppose. But but she does this. This is the part where she finally tags Blake in, right? Which is something that theoretically she probably could have done, at least in the past 2 chapters. And she's never really done it before. She's always kind of freaked out a bit and then kind of gotten through it. I think it's interesting that she finally is like, all right, Blake, your turn.
Yeah, and I think the journey and the discussion that we see in this chapter is largely what sort of leads her to that. And I think, let's just cover it as we go, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So Mags indicates these 4 children and introduces them. And Rose has this thought that felt weird. So let me just read it out so we can get it verbatim. Mags is introducing them and she says, Noah, Benny, Mia, and Olive, Mags said, indicating the 4 children in order. And we're all present, Rose noted.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thought. It doesn't quite connect, right? It feels like Rose is maybe thinking about something else, or like there's a lingering thought that kind of is clicking in there. But the thing is, it's italicized, and we're going to get to this later on in this chapter, but there's a bit of italic text that I definitely think is Blake thinking through, like Blake's thoughts coming through into Rose's head here. And so I'm kind of looking at this and I'm thinking, like, is that what this is? It just feels weird, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it.
I mean, yeah, this line definitely jumped out to me on both read-throughs. It's like, I don't know what Rose is getting at with this. Your theory that it's Blake is interesting, but doesn't really answer any of my actual questions. It doesn't make any more sense, yeah. It makes as little sense if Rose is thinking it as if Blake is thinking it. Yeah, it's a bit of a lateral movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, there's a lot in this chapter that is all about sort of tying, in particular, these four vestiges to Rose. I mean, she basically goes on a huge monologue later that we'll talk about
Yeah.
how similar they are. And like, I think it's just achieving that. I mean, it definitely
Yeah,
does
yeah.
a little bit. And that's the only thing I've sort of been able to pull from it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the big comparison is that they're obviously not all present. I mean, like, as in the four children and
Yeah.
Rose are not all there.
Yeah, that's fair.
So maybe she's kind of making a little joke to herself about that. I'm not sure. Um,
Yeah, it could be. I mean, that makes more sense than any of my ideas.
yeah. So Mags kind of starts explaining what's going on to these children, and they obviously don't take it well that the world seems to be ending around them, which is, I guess, fair enough.
Yeah, and I mean, I've noticed you're just kind of skipping over the body horror descriptions
Yeah,
of the
of
children,
course. You're
and
going to make us go back and talk about how
yeah,
horrifying they all are.
I mean, Olive's my favorite, right? Like her face is being eaten,
Yeah,
and the mice are living in her gums and like pushing her teeth out.
which
It's
one is it that
disgusting.
when they open their mouth, a rat kind of comes out and then like grabs
Yeah,
on and scurries? That's Olive, is it?
yeah. I think it was Olive where
It's
she kind
fucking
of spits out a
horrifying.
rat
Yeah,
or sneezes out a rat. It's like all that stuff about like in the Middle Ages where it was like, oh, disease is like a demon possessing you or a spirit possessing you. It's like
yeah,
turns out maybe it kind of is in the Pact verse. But yeah, like there's also a bit. Again, I think it's Olive where later on when Noah agrees to something, they're like, does Noah speak for all of you? And like the other two are like, yes, and Olive's just kind of like, oh. Because they've like eaten her tongue, and it's
yes.
just like
She's
it's
more,
just
yeah, her mouth is more mouse than mouth.
and it's this completely disturbing and kind of hilarious beat just in the middle of this serious stuff. I loved all the body horror. This chapter
Yeah,
was great.
yeah. Yeah, it's horrifying. So let's, as I intended, let's kind of go over that and talk about the rest of this scene. Yeah, so these children basically get pretty upset at, well, particularly Rose, Ainsley, and Lola, who are kind of members of the powerful families of Jacob's Bell, and in the eyes of the Mouseketeers, did nothing to help this situation that they knew about, which is shitty. I mean, Rose couldn't really do anything, but Ainsley and Lola were a willing participant in the major families in Jacob's Bell.
Yeah, in a way, these kids kind of Evan everyone. Because
Yes.
yeah, I agree with them, but also I don't. Like it's this really fun sort of moral thing where I get what they're saying. Like Noah's stance basically seems to be, look, even if I understand that we're better off helping you, like you left us here so you can go fuck yourselves. Like I'm refusing to work with you, and that's a terrible stance, but it's also a very understandable one.
Mm.
And like so, like I kept it was like every line I kept kind of flip flopping about how on side with Noah I was.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I felt the same way. But then Rose, I mean, we'll get to this in a bit, I suppose. But Rose's response is perfect for this situation.
Yeah, well, I mean it works. So even if it wasn't perfect, it was
It
the right
achieved
call.
its goal, yeah. All
Um,
right. Before we get to that, there's this bit that I think is really interesting where uh, Mags and Rose kind of ruminate on why the Mouseketeers haven't been, Barbatorum, haven't been split in half when it seems like everything else here has. And it's Mags offers some theories like, I had a deal with Johannes and maybe that's still there, or maybe Johannes was like in there somehow and, exerted some small power to maintain that deal or something. And it's something. It's like a little thread to tug on. And
yeah,
we don't really get much, but it's something that's like maybe Barbatorum is bound to previous deals. I mean, he's still got a domain, so kind of makes sense that he's upholding Johannes's deal so that he still has access to Johannes's resources. I could see that happening.
yeah, absolutely. As you said, like I think the fact that the domain and the familiar bonds are still in place kind of suggests that Barbatorum is still bound to both the benefits and presumably the side effect or the what's the opposite of benefits, the
Drawbacks.
fallback. Yeah, the drawbacks. That's
Yep.
the word I'm looking for. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The drawbacks to being Johannes. So yeah, like I'm gonna go ahead with assuming that's the case until proven otherwise. But this does feel like one of those things where there might be a revelation in a couple of chapters, and I'll be like, okay, like
Yeah.
this was our clue to that.
So I guess the question that begs to me is: are there any deals that we know Johannes has made that are pivotal enough to play a role here.
Yeah, I mentioned in my live read, I was like, I'm kind of resisting the urge to go back through every chapter Johannes has been in and track any promises. And I didn't get a chance to do that, luckily, because otherwise I probably would have spent hours on it. Um,
Yeah.
I can't. Nothing's jumping to my mind on promises Johannes has made. He made a lot of deals with people, but they were
Yes.
he was usually smart enough to make those temporary, as far as I can remember.
Yes. I think the one that I'm thinking about is when he, recruits Faisal, doesn't he talk about, like, this is what I'm going to be doing and I'm swearing myself to be doing it in this specific way?
Yeah.
So maybe
There is some.
that plays into it. Maybe Barbatorum's actually going to have to better the world a little bit, which will be fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, I'd have to go back and look at that phrasing. It was, it wasn't that long ago. It was 14.x, but
Yeah.
there was definitely talk of moving things back to the good old days in some ways, which, I mean,
Well, yeah,
Barbatorum
Barbatorm has
is
done
doing
that.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I'll be interested to sort of keep an eye on this, but that suggests a weakness for sure. Like as you said, if we go with the whole he's bound to the promises, then that immediately makes you think, okay, well, what promises have we heard Johannes make in this book that can be a weakness?
Yes.
And none are jumping to mind, but I'm sure I'll be kicking myself when they do.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much that he's bound to it, but that if he wants to maintain his hold over the domain and over Faisal, he has to adhere to the promises as well, That would
Yeah.
make a lot of sense. So
I,
it's a great way to deny him some resources.
yeah, obviously, I think like the other thing here is like perhaps a wrinkle in this work is he went, or maybe he went easy on them, but they clearly didn't come out unscathed because they're all like cracked like porcelain, I think is how Rose describes it.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that's new, and I'd be willing to bet like that just seems very Barbary the way they're cracked.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe there has been some effect put on them. I don't know. Maybe that was why it was so hard to convince them. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So yeah, Rose and Mags kind of finish informing the Mouseketeers what's going on, and they ask for their help, and the Mouseketeers refuse. And then Rose kind of refuses their refusal, I suppose.
Yeah, I've decided that Thorburns shouldn't be allowed swords anymore. I just want to make that like a blanket rule for Blake and Rose that they're
Yeah,
not
keep
allowed
them away from
swords.
sharps.
Yeah, like it's a bad mix. And again, Rose actually looks outside before doing this. Like, I mean, everyone does because there's some Faisal does some weird shit that I didn't fully understand. Out there, and she again looks out at these masses of vestiges, which obviously makes her very uncomfortable, and that I guess pushes her to take the negotiations a bit further.
Yes. It's I'm torn on it, but also I really like it. Like, it's such a crazy plan for Rose to do, but it's so clearly the perfect thing to get through to them because they obviously just don't understand the horrible, horrible, horrible situation that they're in. And it's so shitty that they're in that situation, of course, but they're making a decision based on incomplete information. And really what Rose is doing is filling in the gaps in their knowledge. And so it's nice. It's a nice service that she's offering to these people at knife point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got to wonder if there's a way to do that without a knife to the throat. But there's like a very raw honesty to this assault.
Yeah, there's no bullshit here for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, she's not mollycoddling them. She takes after her grandma in that regard.
Can we? I mean, I know we've said this before, but I'm pretty sure that's why Molly is called Molly because of the word mollycoddle. Like, it's so perfect.
Oh yeah, it could be.
Sorry, continue though.
Yeah. Sorry. Just lost my place for a sec. Yeah. No, there's definitely huge tracks of this bit where Rose is kind of, I don't know lecturing Noah or informing Noah, where like you could definitely just take entire paragraphs out of this and just frame it as her yelling at herself and Blake. Like there's so much about the way she frames everything that is just tying her and Blake's situation in with theirs so much. And I think that this is so important, particularly to the decision that she makes at the end of this chapter. Because yeah, like as we said, she's being like pretty raw and honest, and she while she's also threatening them to make them listen, she kind of gets down on their level, and she's like, I was constructed like you for a shitty purpose, Um, and then something she goes into from there after sort of comparing herself to them is, regardless of how we win, your lives are going to be some kind of miserable. And she tries to offer them a way out, but there's one line in particular where you start to think, like Rose starts talking about how she looks to the future, and you got to think she's realizing, I don't think her life is ever going to be not miserable, right?
Yeah.
Like this is something the story talked about arcs and arcs ago, about how when Blake and Rose found out that they were chopped up, it's kind of like they're never going to be complete. There's always going to be something missing from them, and like Rose was built to last. She wasn't built to be happy about it.
Yeah. And she's obviously traded away her future as a bargaining chip twice, right? Marrying Alistair, which isn't the worst thing. I mean, it's probably not ideal, but it's not the worst. But then, devoting herself in servitude to the Abyss, or not in servitude, but as a Abyss kind of scourge practitioner, like, she hasn't made herself a nice happy ending at the end of all this.
No, exactly. Whereas like Blake was so obsessed with his happy ending that he was kind of killing himself before he could get to it.
Yeah.
Rose is the opposite. Rose is setting herself up for this future. Like, she was built to last. And I think as she's having this conversation, she's starting to realize, my life's gonna fucking suck.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think this is gonna carry through the rest of this conversation. I think this is what has this big impact on how the chapter ends.
Yeah. Yeah, so she's talking to these mouseketeers and telling them basically the hard truths, right? And one of the hard truths she tells them is, you guys are always going to be vestiges. And then this thought crosses her mind. A thought crosses her mind, which is, I'll always be a vestige. And it explicitly, the thought crossed Rose's mind. She didn't think it. The thought crossed her mind. And it's italicized. And as soon as I saw this, I thought to myself, this is Blake. Like, it feels like Blake. And I know it could still be Rose. I know it's ambiguous enough about that. But it just vibes Blake to me so hard.
Yeah, I mean, could be both. I don't know. I definitely read it much more as like, this is a thought Rose has been avoiding. Like, yeah, I mean, I've already sort of touched on it. This is something where I think she's realizing she set herself up for a miserable future. She comments just after this in her head about how she always used to have these plans for how she was going to get a domain, and they were frankly terrifying. It seems to me like she was planning on using the barber as leverage to make sure nobody actually challenged her.
Yeah.
Which is like all sorts of fucked up.
Yeah.
But now she has this thought, which is like, now that she's made this deal with the Abyss and all that, like, she can't get a domain. Because it will be tainted by the Abyss, or she can get one, but it's not going to be a good place, because it's going to have bits of the Abyss. Yeah, and like, again, it's just more and more of these trends of Rose being the long-term planner, and her long-term plan is, I'm going to be miserable. And like, yeah, again, I don't think it's a coincidence that all this is happening right before where she's giving Blake another turn.
Yeah, interesting. You think she's getting to that point of just kind of giving up?
Well, I don't know if she has it in her. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, obviously, it's kind of been established that Blake would let her kill him given the chance, and I don't think Rose made any promises to be the one to kill him and to win.
Yeah.
So she could always snipe him. They might end up in some competition to try and get themselves out of the picture first. Although Blake could win that. That's his special. That's his specialty.
But
I don't know. Like, a chapter ago, I would have assumed that Rose was going to be the one to make it out if it had to be one of them. Now I'm less sure after the way this chapter's shaped up.
Yeah. Oh man, final arc stuff. Huh? It's great.
Yeah.
So Noah, the leader of the Mouseketeers, relents under Rose's machete and willingly joins their team.
Yeah, I mean, she does the thing where she takes the sword off of his throat for a minute before he signs up, so it's kind of like slightly less bad. But I mean, obviously, like, Green Eyes comes in with the assist as well, providing this great character reference.
Yeah. Good work, Green Eyes. Really sells it. I want to touch on this line, which is quite a funny line, where Rose thinks that Green Eyes has helped, thinking in the sense that we sometimes want to look at a one-star review for a popular product to see what the worst critics have to say. Which is good. It's a good line. It's funny. But it's also italicized, and so it's kind of a mark against my Blake is thinking things again, theory, because it doesn't feel very Blakey at all. It's just a weird italicized thought that Rose has.
Yeah. Like again, I kind of read all the italicized thoughts as Rose's, but I mean, this could just be a stray thought from Blake. It could be a Blakeism. I don't know.
Yeah, could be. So yeah, Rose kind of is reflecting now on herself and her life, and also on how Johannes's domain is very similar to the Abyss. And I want to touch on this more because I think there are obviously some connections, but it doesn't feel very deep of a similarity. I feel like Rose is reading more into it than I think is valid here, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so my understanding of the universe of Pact right now is that you sort of have this chaotic abyss underpinning reality, like where there's it's sort of raw, chaotic, the underbelly of reality, and as you kind of build up, there's more and more meaning. And I think that meaning and the sort of strength of symbolism and stuff in Pact is something that's very much reinforced by humanity. So maybe by bringing the domain closer to the good old pre-human days, and by, because it's Barbatorum, he's sort of intentionally undone a lot of the structure of the universe of the domain. So I think maybe he's just brought it down a bit closer. Like if he's stripping away the top of that structure of meaning and those upper layers, maybe that is just sort of moving it further down the spectrum towards a more abyssal, just pure chaos level.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that aspect. The fact that he is a demon of ruin and presumably a bit tainted by the Abyss himself after the time in the library. That makes sense that it would be kind of descending.
Yeah, and I mean that obviously, like, and Rose touches on this. There's perhaps interesting implications there. Like, we've just been learning so much about how, our humans matter in terms of like how human belief can shape things. And maybe that's more true here. Like the practice doesn't necessarily work because it's different rules, but maybe like a group of humans has more say on on shaping the rules here. I don't know. I mean, I think the other thought I had during my live read was, well, if it's already halfway to the Abyss, can we keep pushing it?
Yeah, just give it a little bit more of a nudge. Drop a few desks on it.
Blake still owes the Abyss a big meal, right? Like, here's one.
Yeah, well, I feel like dropping Hillsglade House in kind of satisfied the bargain there, but maybe not.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, he kind of was fighting against that, though, so I don't know if the Abyss would count it.
Don't give him credit for it. Yeah. So, they have the mouseketeers in tow now, and so the group descends through some damaged floors, heading to the bottom to continue their journey. And they cross paths with a few others as they go.
Yeah, so let's talk about more body horror, because there is a guy in this scene who's literally, apparently, only been left with the ability to feel pain, and apparently he's felt it. So, shit, that's horrifying.
Yeah, that's a fun existence.
There's also like this crazy. His other half is this like crazy, violent muscle woman. Like I think it said that he's sort of all fat and she's sort of all like muscle and sort of like. Is it unfair to compare these two to Blake and Rose?
Yeah, so you put that in the notes, and I'm kind of like, I mean, I guess in the sense that they're two people and a man and a woman. Like, anytime a vestige is cut in half, you kind of have to compare them to Blake and Rose, but I don't know if it goes that deep.
I mean, just like on a slightly less intense level, the idea of Blake being the punching bag and Rose being the cutthroat who's out the back. Like I think there's something there.
Yeah. I suppose. Yeah.
Like it's a loose connection, but as you sort of touched on, this place and this chapter are full of vestiges. It's just ripe for comparisons to Blake and Rose.
Yeah.
And I can't again, this is maybe one of those little subconscious things where we see a guy who was just made to feel pain and like the scary girl out the back, and that's just tying a little thread between Blake and Rose and their purpose in our head.
Yeah, fair enough. These two, man, are in bad shape. Like, so they were presumably a vestige. They were basically human. They seem very humanoid. So, yeah, it's pretty fucked up. They're clearly in no shape to, make any aggressive moves. They kind of just seem to be in their own little worlds of pain, which is fun for them. Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, and again, as you sort of touched on, seemingly they're just a human vestige.
Yes.
Which adds more credibility to some of the conspiracy theory stuff we were talking about like the mouseketeers.
Yes.
And why they're okay, because
Yeah.
obviously not all the vestiges were. Either that or this was just a straight up human, which kind of raises a different set of questions.
Yeah, a different and equally horrifying set, I think.
Yes. Like, were the mouseketeers human versions too different from them now because the kids had grown up or something? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? We see some more page powers. The lawyer and the bloodhound are almost caught on them, and Paige basically sends... I mean, it's basically the literal ghosts of the demon's past onto him, as how it seems to be. It's like the most Thorburn power ever, which is forcing you to be weighed down by your mistakes. It's awesome. It's a real classic Thorburn moment.
Yeah, like you, like Rose frames it as karmic burden, is what she thinks it might be, like this manifestation of your karma dragging you back, which is just, yeah, as you said, the irony of a Thorburn weaponizing someone's bad karma against them is fucking delicious.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's a fun little, almost blink and you'll miss it description of what's going on as they try to scamper through these holes in the wall.
Yeah. But they kind of overcome these little mini trials and find themselves on the ground floor, and they're in some kind of huge worm-made tunnel, just like Star Wars, I suppose. Where it's really weird. There's definitely the Mouseketeers kind of hang a bit of a lampshade on what's going on with this tunnel, so maybe we'll find out in a bit. But Rose basically realizes she's out of her depth here and tags in our big boy, our main man, Blake.
No, sorry, forget Blake. What's the deal with this worm? I need to know more about the worm. Do we get more info on the worm?
Yeah.
Just tell me. I need to know.
I mean, if Johannes's domain is basically like the Abyss, the last worm we saw in the Abyss was pretty intense, so the expectations for a worm here are pretty high.
But like Johannes used to come and ask it questions? Like, what sort of questions was he asking? I'm
how's the decomposition going?
I need to know about this worm. Like, this is in my like top 5 unanswered questions in Pact so far. No. Is the worm.
Elliot, you misunderstand. He didn't ask it like questions to gain information. He came down to play trivia games with it. He did like Trivial Pursuit and stuff with this worm.
So you say that like a trivia worm isn't equally
you're right. That's even better. I'd love a trivia worm.
This is very fun. I was sort of keen before. If this doesn't go anywhere, if we never find any more out about the worm, I'll be disappointed, but like that'll totally be the point. Like, this is just some fun bonus little world building.
Yeah, gotta save some stuff for the sequel.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be called Pact 2.
Pact 2.
Worm.
Pact 2 man, that's a good point. I wouldn't see, because like I can't, like, even if I wanted to Google for like Word of God answers on this, I can't, because what am I going to Google? Like Pact worm?
Worm wild bow.
Well, he's found the perfect way to fuck with people reading the story late, because you can't even Google to see if there's Word of God on it. It's great.
Yeah. But putting aside the worm for a second, I know it's hard, but putting aside the worm, it seems like Blake is about to be tagged back in, so we'll see what the actual shape of him is. I mean, he's been basically quiet, except for this chapter, for a while, so we'll see.
I love the delivery of this as well, because like the way it's set up for us is, Waller's like, do you even have a plan, like, beyond just attack? And Rose is like, kinda, and then
and then tags him in. Yeah,
like, it's Blake, and I was like, well, good thing she didn't just say yes, because I don't know if you can call anything involving Blake a proper plan. And like, she doesn't have a plan. Her plan is like, I'm just going to unleash pure chaos on everyone by letting Blake out, and it's going to be like, as you said, I can't wait to see what state he's in. I'm assuming we're switching back to like the first person Blake perspective. when he makes his appearance. I don't know if that's going to be permanent. I feel like the whole your turn thing, maybe we're going to like kind of flicker between them like a
Yeah.
bunch as the story ends. Like that could be really fun. Like I'd love to explore that relationship and why they decide to change like who's in charge at times. And yeah, I'm so excited to see what Blake's like. I know it's Blake, so he's not gonna like, just take 5 minutes to say hi and catch up with everyone. He's probably gonna open by saying hi and then running into the wormhole.
The
But
wormhole. It is a
that was
wormhole.
poor
That's
phrasing.
funny.
Yeah. But yeah, like I'm so excited to see because Blake has given so much to Rose since we last saw him, and what's he like now? Like this, it's going to be so interesting to see next
Yeah.
chapter.
Yeah, but we'll have to wait for next chapter to find out, unfortunately, because that's the end of 16.7. It feels like we're getting this is the we've had I think one or two chapters of setting up the grand finale, and now I think we're about to hit the pedal back. I mean, Blake's in charge again, so we're
Yeah,
about to stick the pedal back down.
I was about to say you don't put Blake back in charge if you want to keep doing more setup. Blake is the doer, not
Yep.
the planner.
So
So
yeah,
yeah, I think we're charging straight at that tower next chapter.
yeah. But that's for next chapter. Before we end our episode, let's dive back in and see, as we round the final turn, what people were saying about this book for 5 years ago when this chapter first came out. Elliot, do you want to pull out your comment?
Sure. So I pulled out a comment by Guy.
Specific.
And basically, basically, Guy just sort of brought up this sort of moral debate that was happening with Noah about how, like, Guy's kind of defending the Lolas and the Ainsleys by saying, I actually think it was pretty unreasonable to expect them to do anything about Johannes because he had an angel assisting him. His domain was fucking huge. Like, he was very powerful. There was nothing these people could do. Perhaps even if they all got together and organized, like, you can't even really besiege him because his domain's so big. And Guy kind of ties it back to what was happening in Toronto. Like, I think this was a really interesting thing about this comment to me was, Guy says that they, and we've done it as well, criticize the Toronto practitioners a lot for not dealing with things like and pose. And Guy's kind of like, yeah, because they could, whereas like dealing with Johannes was probably beyond the capabilities of the rest of Jacob's Bell.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting to sort of see. Like I feel like a lot of different people would have a lot of different takes on exactly how reasonable Noah's anger at Lola and Ainsley was here.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing, I mean, we didn't touch on it in our discussion, but Evan was actually not on Noah's side here. Evan, who was, this very arc, talking about to elder sister about how dare she not take actions to do something, was talking to Noah about how actually, well, there wasn't really much that could have been done here. I think it was very interesting to put him on the other side of that argument.
Yeah, if anything, I'd say that that's maybe a case for agreeing with Guy that it's unreasonable of Noah to expect them to have done anything because, putting Evan, who has so far kind of been the embodiment of hating that kind of talk, on the other side, kind of validates it.
Yeah, definitely. So I put out a comment by a user called Zim the Fox, and I like this comment because it kind of started talking about what Zim thinks is going to happen towards the end of the story and how much they hope for a nice Blake Green Eyes Evan kind of relaxing conclusion, but how that doesn't seem super likely, and it kind of started a chain of people basically theorizing about how this story is going to end up. So I thought, as we round the final bend, Elliot, what do you think? How is this story gonna... Is there a possibility for Blake to have a happy ending here?
Yeah, it's hard to say at this point. Like, I want to read next chapter before really talking about anything like that, because presumably next chapter we're going to get a look at what Blake is like now.
Yeah, true.
And I think that's going to really inform my opinion of whether there's a happy ending for Blake. Because as we sort of already touched on, just the way Rose behaved in this chapter made me think that she's starting to give up on having a future as well. And so that kind of puts a bit of a spanner in the works. I think up until now, I'd kind of assumed that Rose probably was the one who was going to make it out, like they said. Seeing what Blake is like now next chapter is going to really, I think, give me some insight into where I think that whole situation might end up with these two.
Yeah. Okay, so you're not going to stake a bold claim?
I mean, if you want me to,
Yeah, put something
like,
down so that people can hold you
this is
to account on whether you get it right or not.
okay. My low confidence but very firmly held prediction is. I mean, I'm gonna go with Blake. I want it to be Blake. Like Zim the Fox says, I just wanted happily ever after for sushi, chicken nugget, and tree boy. Although I guess he wouldn't be a tree boy anymore.
He'd be a real boy, like Pinocchio.
Yeah, they can fix that. Just send him down to the abyss for 5 minutes, and it'll all get sorted.
His branches back.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll pick Blake, but I reserve the right to completely do a 180 on that halfway through next chapter.
All right, fair enough. Hey, speaking of next chapter, that's when you'll have to wait to hear from us again.
Yeah, because that is the end of our coverage of this chapter.
Yeah.
So if you want to keep talking about this chapter, head on into the discussion thread that's linked in the show notes below. It's also the best place to answer our discussion question, which is, what do you think of Pact's pacing?
Yeah. It's something that's come up a lot in discussion about Pact, and we want to hammer out this argument once and for all. Let's get stuck into it. So leave us your thoughts in that discussion thread.
Yeah, that's right, because we'll be tackling that on Monday, and basically
we'll be solving it, not just tackling.
Yeah, exactly. We'll make the final discussion closed forever decision on Pact's pacing.
Yep, it'll be settled forever. If you want more information on All Packed Up, our 24-hour live stream, and it's for charity as well, that we're doing when this show ends, you can check out the top link in the show notes down below. And we've got a full schedule, all kinds of cool stuff. Hey, you can even get involved. Leave us some thoughts and ideas, and we're going to have all kinds of participation and donations and rewards and milestones, and it'll be crazy.
Yeah. And if you've had enough of Pact for now, get other things in your system so that you're craving Pact again by Monday for our next episode. Head on over to doofmedia.com. There's We Want More and Kingslingers and, probably some other new shows soon. So, just keep going to doofmedia.com. Make that your homepage. Check it every day, all the time.
Yeah, what about a show where Scott and Matt just go around and eat all kinds of different fast food, and then they have to rank it? And it's like each episode they do a different fast food, and then they talk about it for like an hour, and it's like, yeah. Is that a show?
I mean, we'll have to pitch it to them and find out.
Yeah. And if you want it to be a show, the best way to make it happen is by supporting the Doof Media Network. Because I think time has shown that if we give enough money to Matt and Scott, they will literally kill themselves to make more shows for this network. So if you want to see that happen, go to patreon.com/Doof Media and give them money and tell them it's for the burger show or fast food or whatever.
Yes, and speaking of people who seem to be killing themselves to bring us content, head on over to patreon.com/Wildbo, because he keeps making chapters at a frankly insane rate, and he does that because of the support of all of his patrons.
Yeah. Oh, that would be a great Wildbo story. Okay, so got to give it a 4-letter name, so it's going to be Meat, and he goes around, it's like a story about like the fast food industry, and I don't really know what, he can figure out the details, I'm just the ideas guy, but I think that's what it will be like.
Okay. I have no idea how to work off of this. I want to do yes and, but I'm stuck.
Just do a quick no but.
So we'll be back on Monday, the 17th of February, for Judgment 16.8.
We'll see you then.